We've already introduced the panel, and at this time, I'll get the stopwatch out. And we're going to allow each of you to have a minute and a half to state your platform and where you're going with your campaign and why you'd like to be elected to the State Assembly District 21. And like I always say with the last name of Abbatangelo, we'll do this alphabetically, and we'll start with Mr. Armstrong.
All right, thank you for having me. I appreciate this opportunity. I'm humbled to be before you. My name is Derek Armstrong. I'm 33 years old. I was born and raised in Las Vegas. I graduated from Chaplain High School. Afterwards, I made one of the best decisions of my life, and I joined the United States Marine Corps. I served in the Marine Corps for 5 years, obtaining the rank of sergeant, and then once I was out in active reserves, I was promoted to the rank of staff sergeant. Afterwards, I came back home, and I went to school at UNLV. I graduated cum laude with a bachelor's degree in economics, and then I went to law school. I graduated law school in 2010. Afterwards, I took the bar exam. I passed the first time, and I opened up the law firm. I own a small law firm in Henderson that I represent small business owners and individuals in tax matters and estate planning. I'm also a partner in a CPA firm, and I'm still taking classes so I can sit for the CPA exam probably by the end of this year. As far as my goals, I am definitely pro-business. I want to see changes in education, and also I want to make sure that there's jobs for everyone. That's my biggest thing is we need to create jobs to raise revenues for the state instead of just increasing taxes. Thank you.
And Commissioner Coates.
Okay, well, thank you so much for having us. My name is Andrew Coates, and I'm running to make a difference. I'm a native Tibetan. I was born and raised in Assembly District 21, and I'm coming to this campaign with a full spectrum educational background in science, law, and business. I have a science degree from UC Davis. I am currently in law school at UNLV as well as the MBA program. And my professional experiences include scientific research focusing on immunochemistry and environmental contaminants. I have worked in higher education administration. I have traveled the country promoting agricultural education to middle school and high school students. And last but not least, I have experience in congressional and constituent service, having worked in congressional offices in both Washington, D.C. and Southern Nevada. So I will be coming to the legislature with a unique perspective in education and a firm grounding in public service. So with that, thank you very much. Let's do this.
And we'll start with questions. We'll start on the opposite side, my left.
Hi guys, thanks for coming. Good afternoon. I'm going to ask you some for or against questions, each of you, and that might help my panel pick out some good questions. Start with you, Mr. Armstrong. Education tax, for or against?
The margins tax and the
Yes.
Against.
Against.
Campus carry, for or against?
Campus choice.
For, as long as you meet CCW standards.
Medical marijuana,
For.
In general, against.
for
that
or against, please?
Against.
Thank you. Education for children, for undocumented illegal immigrants, for or against?
For educating children that are here.
For educating individuals who have a tax-paying stake in education.
For or against?
That's, my people are saying me to Carson City for more than for or against answers, but thank you.
Okay. State lottery.
For.
For.
Okay. Gay marriage.
For.
Against.
Thank you.
All right, guys, maybe this won't be so tough. Supposing the marginal tax does go down in defeat, there will be pressure on our state legislators to try to fill some void for funding for the state that they feel is needed. Should they propose a sales tax on services, would you be on board with that kind of a tax, or find some other funding mechanism the state supposedly needs? And either one can start and answer.
I would be against that. So that's a short answer. Against that proposal. I believe, really we've looked at the BLM issues. If we are in need of revenue, we need to really get back. The federal government controls 85% of land in Nevada, and we need to get that back in our own control. And we can follow New Mexico's example, which they raise over $500 million from their public lands each year. They put that into their education system.
Yeah, I would also say that I'm against it. because you can already say that, or make an argument that there is already a tax on services, because the modified business tax in Nevada is a payroll tax, and obviously payroll has to do with services. And that's one of the other issues that coming up in this legislature, the sunset tax that we're supposed to expire in 2013 that didn't, would have reduced the modified business tax for business owners, creating more opportunities for business owners to create jobs in Nevada.
I know both of you already answered on medical marijuana. Pretty good chance in 2016 the voters are going to be exposed to full legal marijuana in Nevada. What are your guys' opinion on that?
Are you talking about recreational?
Correct, non-medical.
So, as a Republican, I'm definitely for personal choice and individual freedoms. And I would be for recreational marijuana. As we can see in Colorado, the amount of tax revenue that they've created just from taxing and regulating it would be a huge benefit to education. Additionally, I think that if you look, a lot of the crime rates are dropping in Colorado, which would benefit Nevada in another way, because we wouldn't have to keep so many people in jails and incarcerate them and pay for that. So I create additional funding that way.
Thank you, great question. I am fundamentally against legalizing marijuana for recreational purposes. We're still studying what's happening in Colorado to see if it is really beneficial. And regardless of the revenue, I believe it has too many costs to society to take that chance. Thank you.
This question is for both of you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
What is your position on CCSD disciplining teachers for having inappropriate sexual relationships with students? We'll start with you, Mr. Armstrong.
Are you asking me whether or not they should be?
There we go. In regards to disciplining them, do you think it should be left the way it is now, or do you think the punishment should be increased?
I think the punishment should be determined by not just CCSD, but those should be criminal statutes for, that's statutory rape in most cases. So I think that the criminal statutes either need to be kept the same or raised.
Right, that needs to be pursued in court. In a criminal case, you have the courts decide that, but definitely I'm for stronger and effective disciplinary actions on that.
My question is for Mr. Coates. Seeing that you're in law school, when I was at the legislature last session, there was a lot of attorneys and aspirations for judgeships. I got the argument that you can't fight on civil liberties issues because federal law is supreme law, and then I thought it was funny that they passed medical marijuana, which is, fighting federal law using state law. So if I was going to come to you and you were my legislator and I wanted you to fight, say, something like the National Defense Authorization Act, which has indefinite detention provisions at the state level, would you tell me the same thing, that I can't fight federal law using state legislatures, or would you help me find a way to use state law to protect citizens' rights?
As your assemblyman? Yeah. Okay, is this working? Good? Okay, thanks. Thank you for your question. As your assemblyman, I will never tell you not to fight back. Obviously, you have to look at the power difference. The federal government is going to have an upper hand on those matters, but we can pass state statutes. We've seen that states pass their own statutes, and that's a first step towards reforming any federal law that needs reforming, that needs to go away. And that's a wonderful example of federal government overstepping its power. And so we can take action, effectively or not. As a state, we can at least send a message to Washington. Thank you.
Thank you for coming out, gentlemen. My name is Eric Morelli. My question to both of you is concerning the education and the budget within. Now, education is always funded first in the legislature. And with the increasing student population that we're getting, how do you plan on funding education first without compromising other portions of the budget?
Okay, I'll start. Thank you for the question. Obviously, education is an important issue. I'm not sure if anyone saw or watched the State of the District speech by Pat Sikorsky this week, and he talked about the budget and obviously about the return on investment and then several other key issues moving forward in auditing each program to make sure that the funding that they have is either current or if they need to reduce some of the programs. Additionally, I would work with him as well as the rest of the legislature to make sure that education is funded appropriately. And obviously, we want to see things like return on investment for the programs that we are implementing.
Okay, thank you for your question. In terms of funding it first, that's a legislative procedure, so we're going to make sure that happens. What my main priority going into the legislature is making sure we're spending the money on the right things. I mean, I'm sure you've seen my website. My fundamental platform is real education reform. And that's looking at not just, on one side you hear, oh, privatize it, that'll make everything better. And on the other side, you hear, spend more money, and that will fix all our problems. I would say, no, you have to look at what's being spent. You have to fundamentally reform our education system for the better of all the vets, and especially our students.
How you guys doing? Thank you very much for coming. How do you feel about unemployment lasting 2 years?
I think that's an incredibly way too long to be on unemployment. I understand that some individuals have a harder time obtaining employment because whether or not their job was replaced through technology or other matters and they need to be trained. However, there are programs through NVTR, the Nevada training, to receive some of those skills. And I do think that the more appropriate number was what it was in the past, at 24 to 26 weeks for unemployment was a better number for that.
2 years is very long. Obviously, we look at this with compassion, but at the end of the day, if we want something, we go for it. And so what our job is, rather than extending unemployment benefits, is creating an environment that best sets up individuals for economic success.
Regarding education, there are a lot of studies that show that if children learn later, learn academics later, it's better for them in the long run. Finland shows up with the best score in science, reading, and math. They start at 7 and school at 15. Same thing in Switzerland, they end up school at 15. At 18, they have gone either through an apprenticeship, where they make good money, or they go ready for university after college degree. Why don't we adopt some of the good practice from other countries?
Well, that's a wonderful example of trying to learn from other systems of education where we can look for success. And part of what I believe we need to bring into our education system is innovation. And for example, one platform of mine is to institute 2 tracks for high school graduation, one for students who know they want to go to college, so we will put in college-ready measures in place there. The other one is for a career track to partner with businesses in the area for apprenticeships, for internships. So that's an example of innovation. I think that's great. We got to keep on the lookout for studies like that. And yeah, thank you.
So I think one of the biggest issues, and I know it's touched on by the governor and then also by Pat Sikorsky, is the fact that we're failing kids at an early age. One of the biggest things in the Pledge of Achievement right now is teaching kids to learn by the 3rd grade. So instead of learning to read, they're reading to learn. And I think that's a big issue because if we're not setting up the kids to succeed at that early of an age, then the stats show that they're so much more likely to drop out or fail high school just because they're never able to catch up. So I think focusing on areas like earlyhood child education, kindergarten, and pre-K would substantially improve the benefits of our education system.
Hi, good afternoon. So I know that we're all aware of the disparities that exist in our community, mainly health and education, and I've been heavily impacted by the disparity in education, having 2 young children. How do you suggest that we remove these issues? Because from my perspective, I see that we're very top-heavy when we come to the lower education system, and I don't feel like things like the IEPs are being properly enforced. And so how do you suppose we place new legislation or enforce the current legislation to be more effective?
So addressing students specifically.
Yeah, being number 50 on the totem pole,
Right.
I'd like to know your thoughts and what you'd like to see change.
Right, so in terms of the difference in quality, I believe we need to kind of retool the per pupil spending. And, well, okay, well, thank you very much. I have a voice. So, sorry, where was I? Yes, so we need to retool the per pupil spending formula to account for need-based spending. So, in terms of ELL or special education, for example, that needs to be in the formula for our spending on education. Thank you.
So I agree with that we do need to address the Nevada plan too, which was created a long time ago and doesn't have a lot of the focuses that Southern Nevada faces with the large Hispanic community. But I think that there's more to it than that. I think we need to improve teacher training, because the quality of teachers really matters and whether or not our kids succeed. And we owe it to our kids to have the best teachers possible so that they're more able to be successful in life.
What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on the illegal immigration and how it competes with returning veterans seeking jobs?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, great question, thank you. Unless you want to go further. Okay, so first of all, our veterans should always have top priority. We need to have statutes in place that ensure that veterans can find work, or at least apprenticeships, building off of partnering with small businesses or local businesses to get veterans connected to job opportunities. In terms of so I'm sorry, you want thoughts on illegal immigration?
Yeah, how it competes with returning veterans seeking jobs.
Right, of course it competes, and we need statutes in favor of veterans on this matter. And we also need to actually study the matter to identify what the particular areas of competition are that we can be most effective in.
So this is a tough issue because it has a lot to do with the federal level rather than the state, because a lot of the immigration is affected at the federal level and a lot of the veterans programs as well. Like the vocational rehab or the GI Bill. I went to school on the GI Bill, so that was a huge transition for me from the military. How it competes with illegal documented or undocumented workers, I think we just need to enforce the federal laws, and then we wouldn't have to worry so much about that. But I think that there's a lot of programs in place for veterans, and I know some employers just have veteran preference hiring, so I'm not sure if the two issues are really at odds with each other. We just need to enforce the federal laws and then ensure that veterans have transitioned to compete with jobs other than against undocumented workers.
This question is for Mr. Armstrong. You are currently in school, correct?
Oh, that's me.
Which one? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay. So if you are currently in school, of course, obviously I'm not going to be against somebody continuing their education. How do you think, though, that will conflict with your schedule if you are elected?
It won't, but I think it's a great concern. Obviously, I've looked into it for a great deal. I will simply declare a leave of absence from the Law and Business School, and then I'll come back after the legislative session and be on track to graduate. Thank you.
My question is for both of you. 85% of Nevada's land is owned by the federal government. I would like to know what your thoughts are on that as a whole, and either way, what you would want to see happen.
All right, well, I would like to see more Nevada control of our land. And how would I go about doing this? I would partner and work together with other state legislators, in not just Nevada, but the Mountain West region. It is a regional issue in terms of creating a congressional voting bloc to try to impose political pressure on Congress to bring us, to give us back our land. I think the legislative summit on the transfer of public lands held 2 weeks ago was a great example of state legislators working together to address this issue. Thank you.
So I'd like to go further in that, because I do think that there is a coalition building in the western states just to build that same voting bloc to get some of the land back. I know that the most recent study, that AB 227 that was passed last legislative session, which the person we're running against voted against, that created the Nevada Land Management Task Force, which was tasked to see how this benefits Nevada, has come back and said that we might be able to get between $30 and $100 million a year just from getting another 4 million acres of land back. So how do we get that back though? We have to work with other states in order to get a congressional block. Whether or not, it would be nice if we had a Senate majority leader that fought for the state, but we really don't. So we have to go outside of our state to build up our resources in order to fight this.
Does anybody in the audience have any questions? Or back over to Tom?
I just got one for Mr. Coates. I'd much like to get your opinion on the state. There's been a lot of talk about trying to raise the minimum wage. What your thoughts are about that, and if you are for raising the minimum wage, your thoughts about how it would affect jobs in our economy.
My emphasis is on full employment, so I'm not really focused on raising the minimum wage, so I would not raise it, but create measures, or well, best have a reliable tax structure in Nevada so that more people are fully employed rather than working on part-time jobs.
Any other questions from the panel?
Okay, so this one's for Mr. Armstrong. As of last month, just last month alone, we added 17,000 new jobs in Nevada. Unfortunately, all of those jobs were in leisure and hospitality. They're leading the way to our recovery, but they're also one of the reasons why we were the hardest hit by the recession. So how do we go about diversifying our economy so we don't run into the same problem we did when the bottom fell out last time?
Thank you for the question. Yeah, I think where we got hit the hardest, a lot of the construction industry went away as well, as in addition to the service industry. And I think we'll see a lot of the construction jobs coming back. There's plans for like 3 stadiums right now. The MGM is building their private stadium. The 51s are going to get one up in Summerlin. And then whether or not UNLV gets their on-campus stadium. So that would create a lot of jobs with that. In addition, the jobs you mentioned were probably a lot from the Cromwell opening and also at SLS. And there's a couple others that are going to be opening fairly soon. We are in competition to get the battery factory for the car manufacturer, as well as we're doing things like why I might not be in agreement with the tax incentive to make movies in Nevada, how it was funded, because we essentially have a payroll tax and they're going to end up selling that credit at a discounted rate, so why we create that credit? Increasing that industry in Nevada is important as well. So just diversifying, getting more of the construction jobs back and recovery, so we have more jobs to create more revenue, because we receive a lot of tax revenue from that modified business tax, and people own property, so they pay property taxes, and then they have increased money, so they have sales tax. So you don't have to increase or add a new tax, we just need to create jobs so people have money to spend.
Any other questions from the panel? Any questions from the audience? Mr. Armstrong, Mr. Coates, thank you for your time and thank you for attending today.
Thank you.